format, so it's really the difference from the part to the solution. So that's pretty cool.
Mushroom. Okay, I think we're all actually here, ready to go again. So change of tack this time. So we have from local Canadian project there from the Department of National Defence. And now we're going global. So we're going to one of our partner standards organizations. Richard Estephan has come from the Open Geospatial Consortium. I'm sure some of the work he's got to talk about might be familiar to you, because we do work really, really closely with the OGC. But it's good to have Richard here this morning. Thank you, Richard.
Hello. Great. Okay, good morning, everyone. So today I will share a Canadian story of geospatial innovation and how OGC standards are being used in real-world projects. This is not only a technical standard story, it is also a story about emergency response, climate resilience, marine safety, and how government and industry can work together. I will focus on 3 OGC pilots today, where Canada played an important role. These pilots show standards move from ideas to testing to operational value. Sorry for that. That's the agenda for, we're going to be focusing, first of all, starting with the standard story, moving to discussing more about the 3 pilots, and then the outcomes of those pilots. All right, so why standards matter when disaster strikes? Disasters are becoming more frequent, more complex, and more expensive. Floods, wildfires, storms, and other emergencies require many types of geospatial data. The challenge is not only that data exists. The challenge is that the data is often spread across many agencies, many systems, many formats, and many projections. During an emergency, decision makers do not have time to manually bring all this information together. This is where standards matter. Open standards help turn fragmented data into a shared digital fabric. They make it possible to build a common operating picture. When emergency managers can see what is happening, where it is happening, and what decisions need to be made, standards are not just technical documents, they make real-time decisions possible. Canada has been an important partner in OGC standardization for many years. Canadian federal agencies have supported pilots, standards work, and strategic initiatives that have global impact. Canadian industry partners have also played a key role by building reference implementations and testing standards in real use case. What is important here is that Canada does not only participate in discussions, Canada helps test standards in real world environments. This is very valuable because pilots help move standards from theory to practice. They also help identify gaps before standards are used at a large scale. Many outcomes from OGC pilots feed into ISO TC211 work, so the work has value beyond one country or one project. This slide shows the connection between OGC DGGS work and ISO DGGS activity. DGGS, as most of you know, stands for Discrete Global Grid System. In simple terms, DGGS provides a way to divide the Earth into a consistent grid. This helps us integrate information across different data sets, different scales, and different domains. The roadmap includes different parts of ISO 19170, including 2D, 3D, spatial, temporal, and axis-aligned reference systems. What is important is that pilot work is helping improve this roadmap. For example, the AI DGGS pilot helped identify changes needed in the OGC abstract specification. It also raised the need for new endpoints and better support for 3D and time-based data. This is a good example of how implementation experience improve standards. Now I'll move from the standard story to the pilots. These three pilots show the standard journey in action. The first is going to be focused on the FMSDI, focused on marine data and Arctic emergency response. The second is CDRP, focused on climate and disaster resilience. The third is AI DGGS, focused on disaster management, DGGS, and artificial intelligence. Each pilot had a different focus, but they all tested the same core idea. Can open standard help different organizations connect their data and make better decisions? The answer from this pilot is yes. The Federated Marine SDI pilot focused on connecting land and sea data. This is very important because marine emergencies do not follow administrative boundaries. A vessel accident and an oil spill or an Arctic emergency may require information from many countries and many agencies. The pilot tested interoperability between OGC, ISO, and IHO standards. It also tested how organizations like UKHO, NRCan, NOAA, and the Canadian Hydrographic Service could work together in a federated way. Federated means that each agency keeps control of its own data, but the data can still be discovered and used by others. This is very important for sovereign data because not everything needs to be moved into one central system. The pilot tested OGC API features, coverages, tiles, sensor things, and IHO S100 together. In phase 3, the scenario was a vessel grounding in Kotzebue Sound, Alaska. This is challenging Arctic area where Canadian and US waters meet. The scenario required many types of data, including marine charts, weather, sea ice, vessel traffic, and emergency response information. It also required integration across the land-sea boundary. This is exactly the kind of real-world problem where standards are tested. The pilot showed that a federated marine SDI can access multiple sovereign data providers. It also showed that OGC API and IHO S100 can be used side by side. This is important because the marine community and the geospatial community need to work together more closely. The FMSDI work produced several important standard outcomes. One important result was the drafting of the IHO S100 general feature model in JSON encoding for compatibility with OGC API. This was an important step toward making marine data easier to use through modern web APIs. The pilot also tested OGC API features, coverages, tiles, sensor things, and records together. OGC API records played an important role as the catalog spine. That means it supported discovery across multiple agencies. The pilot also included the first marine deployment of OGC API DGGS. This helped identify gaps that ISO 19173 focused on spatio-temporal DGGS needs to address. Another important outcome was the focus on authoritative data. In an emergency, we need to know who owns the data, which jurisdiction it comes from, and whether it can be trusted. Moving to CDRP, the climate and disaster resilience pilot focused on climate services and disaster resilience. The goal was to move toward fair climate services, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Fair This is important because climate data is often complex and difficult for decision makers to use directly. The pilot helped establish the OGC Climate Resilience Domain Working Group as a permanent home for this work. It also introduced the idea of decision-ready indicators. These indicators are built on analysis-ready data. The idea is simple. We do not only want data, we want information that helps people make decisions. The pilot also connected science teams, decision makers, and data system providers through open standards. This slide shows several scenarios from the Canadian context. One example is the wildland urban interface map for Canada. This is very important because wildfires have had a major impact in British Columbia, Alberta, Quebec, and other regions. The map helps identify populated area wildfire prone vegetation. Another example is tree species resilience modeling. This helps understand how forests may respond to future climate conditions. This kind of information can support forest management and policy decisions. A third example is routing under flood conditions. In the Red River Valley, the pilot tested how routes can be recomputed using live flood contours. This is very practical. If a road is flooded, emergency managers need to quickly understand the safest route. The pilot is also included other global examples such as drought monitoring and tropical cyclone impacts. The CDRP work helped move climate resilience from a project activity into a long-term standards activity. One important outcome was the creation of the OGC Climate Resilience Domain Working Group in 2023. The pilot also tested several OGC APIs at scale, including coverages, processes, records, maps, and tiles. A key concept was the decision-ready indicator framework. This helps move from raw data to analysis-ready data, then to indicators, and then to information decision makers can use. This value chain is very important. It helps bridge the gap between scientists and decision makers. The pilot also aligned with important international frameworks, including the Paris Agreement, UNCCD, the Sendai Framework, and the Global Stocktake. This shows that standards can support both technical interoperability and evidence-based reporting. The third pilot is AI-DGGS, which is the Canadian flagship in the story. The pilot responds to urgent needs in disaster management. Emergency managers need to integrate many types of data quickly. They also need tools that are easier to use. The pilot tested how DGGS can support integration analysis and visualization. It also explored how artificial intelligence can help with data analysis, decision-making, and accessibility. The goal was not to use AI as a separate tool. The goal was to understand how AI can work with standards. This is important because AI depends on trusted, well-structured, interoperable data. Without standards, AI can create confusion, which with standards, AI can become more useful and more reliable. The AI-DGGS pilot used at a Manitoba flood scenario. The main question was simple. Can DGGS provide the spatial backbone for a common operating picture? This is important for emergency managers because they need to make decisions quickly. The pilot tested flood risk indicators, forecasting, and visualization. For example, it looked at how flood volumes could help trigger evacuation warnings. It also looked at immediate response needs and future planning needs under a changing climate. The result was positive. The pilot showed that DGGS can support integration, analysis, and visualization for emergency management. This demo shows the idea of chat to map. The user can ask a question such as major highways crossing Red River flood zones. This is very practical emergency management question. The user is not asking for a data set. The user is asking for an answer. That is an important shift. The system needs to understand the question, find the right data, connect the data, and show the result on a map. This is when standards are critical. Without standards, the system may not know where to find the data or how to combine it. With standards, the AI tool can work across different sources more effectively. This slide shows another important idea. Spatial knowledge graphs help us understand features and relationships. For example, they can help understand roads, rivers, buildings, and networks. DGGS helps organize statistical and analytical data in a consistent grid. Together, they provide a stronger foundation for AI. The knowledge graph helps the system understand semantics and ontologies. The DGGS helps the system organize space and analysis. This combination can support more advanced geospatial AI or GeoAI. It also shows why future standards need to think about data, space, time, semantics, and trust together. Now that we have reviewed the 3 pilots, I want to step back. Each pilot had a different theme. FMSDI focused on marine data. CDRP focused on climate and disaster resilience. AI-DGS focused on disaster management and artificial intelligence. But together, they show common standards outcomes. They show that open standards are not theoretical. They are being used in real scenarios with real data and users and decision makers. There are several common lessons across the 3 pilots. First, open standards work. Multi-vendor and multi-jurisdiction integration is possible today. Second, federation is often better than centralization. Each pilot connected many independent data providers without requiring one central data lake. This is very important for government and agencies that need to keep control of their own data. Third, pilots are a fast track from research to standards. They help test ideas quickly and produce engineering reports that can feed into standards work. Fourth, AI raises the stakes. AI can make geospatial tools more powerful, but it also exposes gaps in our standards. Finally, Canada is the consistent thread. Canada has contributed as a sponsor, implementer, and operational user. That is what makes this a strong Canadian story. One of the most important parts of any pilot is the user feedback. In the AI DGGS work, Manitoba Transportation and Infrastructure testbed, the hardest chat to map interface in a flood response context. The feedback was very valuable. Users said that natural language made GIS easier for non-specialist stuff. They also saw value in federated data. Operators did not need to know which agency owned which layer. They could focus on the decision. This is a powerful point. When standards work well, users do not need to think about the standards. They simply get better access to information. The standards become visible through better workflows, better tools, and faster decisions. Finally, next steps. The next step is to move from demonstration to operational deployment. There are active conversations with disaster management agencies, land management groups, Arctic operations, and national defense. We also need to continue advancing ISO 19172, 3, and 4. The pilots showed important needs around volumes, time, semantics, and trust. Another priority is to make DDGS part of everyday JS workflows. This means more training, more awareness, and more reference implementations. My invitation to ISO TC211 members is simple. Join the OGC Climate Resilience Domain Working Group, join the DDGS Standards Working Group, and help shape the next phase of AI DDGS. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. I think we've got a couple of minutes for a question, but there is an awful lot in there that I picked out. I think the first thing I've got to say is you hit the brief right on the nose with your three examples. Really do show the value of standards, particularly in a federated data context. I know that my boss at home, one of the things that keeps him awake at night is data sovereignty. How we're going to keep hold of your own data sets within your national bounds, and federation of data might be one of these. So I particularly like your the ones that you picked out. And it's maybe just a sort of light-hearted question. Maybe you picked them out because there's two joint chairs of the Climate Resilience Working Group in this room. Is that the case? And I must admit, I would fully endorse joining the OGC Climate Resilience Working Group. We're a great bunch of people. If you want to know a little bit more about our work, there's myself and Ryan here. So does anyone have any questions? Do you have any questions online at all, Jeff? So.
There's a few questions at the back of the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tom.
Thank you for a really good presentation. I just an operational question. Did you work with the search and rescue service people during the pilots, like the ones that actually doing the job out in the wilderness?
No. Was direct with Manitoba.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I will join your groups anyway.
Yeah, you're more than welcome.
Anyone else?
Thanks, Richard. You did a very good presentation. Keeping to beat a dead horse, but one of the standards you missed is the metadata one. We worked on all of this, or at least we worked on a couple of them. There was on a couple of others. And we had, for example, the shipboard in Alaska. Sail and the evacuated. We had to find out where local airports were. Couldn't find any in Canada.
Yeah.
Found a few in Alaska. Big metadata issue. Study. Some of the issues that if that data is not out there, we can't find this, so we can't use it.
Yeah. No, that's a really important point. Metadata is key, especially if you're starting using AI and you need to find the right data, trusted data. You need to have access to the data.
Not just for that, but also if you have it already in your system. You don't know if that's the latest.
Yeah.
Especially something like that. Evacuation is a little more time. We got a wildfire. You gotta have that data, access the latest data right away.
Exactly. Yeah, thank you.
Right. I've just been informed that our next speaker is quite online here, so we do have a little moment of some further questions. So are there any questions for Richard? Or alternatively, we could go back to Paul and John's presentation on Canadian Defence System GIS BIM. We could remember some of the content from there. All right. No questions?
One.
Yeah. Voted.
For the D and D presentation, there's a lot of talk about the digital twin, but there seems to be a lot of activity going on in Canada. There's which is starting in that direction. We've got a program for that. Which you guys have one, and there's some others on the other side. Is there any, are these people talking to each other, or they have like 3 different digital twin implementations, or? And I haven't seen, Richard's here, I haven't seen a lot yet at the OGC on digital tools. There is some activity, but I just want to know all this is going to coalesce at some time.
Well, I think the important thing there is like, what is a digital twin? I think you're gonna have one digital twin of everything. You have the built environment view, there's gonna be, each organization has their representation, their data. Be able to have we work, interact and work together. So it's like I see it basically, a constellation of digital. They come together. So within the infrastructure and environment group, we have we're building integrated digital environment. So to have a digital twin of the built environment, it's going to be very different from another organization in national defense, or operational side. They may need access to our data. I think it has to come together. I don't think there's going to be one digital twin. So in terms of I'm sorry, you mentioned a couple of other ones.
Yeah, there's the building people, the construction people are just, they're being forced by the Ontario government, at least in Ontario, are being forced, the government infrastructure Ontario. Digital twin, in fact, infrastructure Ontario just started a new division where they do is they construct the building from the plans, see the plans actually fit together.
Yeah, we're actually tracking that. John has a few things to say. That was the first picture of infrastructure.
Yeah, just to speak on that quickly, that's an amazing question.
Yeah.
We're trying to get everybody together, and it's a huge audience, and we noted recently there's a huge uptick, and it's now the buzzword for the next technology that a lot of like the KPMGs of the world are pushing it. So there's a whole pile of marketing going on. Ontario has gone with their own strategy for digital twin Ontario. And Quebec is doing an amazing job in the construction sector 4.1, they called it, and doing a whole pile of work around getting digital and doing that integration. And we're sitting here with federal response facilities in the department side of all we have in place. So that's where us as a large organization are trying to get them to pull out, they put it together. Paul mentioned IO sponsored something as well. This kind of the center of our construction universe in Canada, setting trends. They are very active in getting their mandate done. One of the things there's a lot of effort from a group out of IO or that's over that body efforts to go to the pharmacy budget office around. Feature infrastructure group, large, is that if they're going to the students. The result is, hey, we came up with a list of really good things and bottom line. Let's adopt open standards. Let's go and create this hub and the stuff that we were already doing in the solution. So it's like a question of how do we go corral all of industry in such diverse sectors and get them all on the same page, knowing that I really like the language from the OGC presentation as well. Was it ready? Talking much. Okay, the OGC approach, the federated approach for data, because there is so many data sets and we're talking about that build asset layer of data to integrate with others. I think that's a lot of the narrative. And that's why we're here today to try and figure out how do we get all voices together on it.
Yeah, thanks. So I was at the infrastructure group at a meeting in Ottawa. Were you guys there?
Yes.
I
I was at the afternoon, the round table, so it's actually my birthday, so I'm gonna put it with you.
Anyway, I could tell from there that we're still in a lot of, you know, at least the charging off the override.
We're trying hard, that we felt that the moment of the impact was a couple of years ago, and you get everybody corralled, and then there's so many different momentum in the whole direction, we're trying to get that big group under control. Of course, the whole question around, sovereign technology and sovereign data infrastructure for Canada is a biggie, for us, and I think that's gotta be the heart of it, so we're trying hard to pull it back in.
Yeah, that's nice.
Okay,